Hello, hello! Welcome to my channel. Today, I have a very fun doll for you. I will be using this Gen 3 Cupid doll and making a clown. I know lots of people have a phobia of clowns, but I hope this one won't be too scary. Let's look at the concept art. When I first decided that I wanted to do a clown doll, I doodled different types of clowns in my sketchbook. I gravitated towards clowns because of their vast range of fashion styles. You had colorful clowns, sad clowns, goth clowns, jesters, harlequins, etc. There are no rules when it comes to what they wear or what they look like. So I focused on making a colorful and fun doll with bright colors and patterns everywhere. Here's the final concept. She will have fiery red hair with stars all over her face, patterns on her clothes, and a giant yellow bow. Let's get started. I start by stripping the doll of her clothes, removing her hair, then removing her head. Now she's ready for a face-up. I first cover her face in a thin layer of white soft pastels, almost giving her that white makeup look that all clowns seem to have. This doesn't show up too well on the camera though. I also go in with some blue eyeshadow and blush. Then, I draw on her face with a red watercolor pencil. Whenever I'm done sketching on her face, I spray her with Mr. Super Clear off camera. This allows me to build up color better. For the first few layers, I'm just trying to darken up the colors. Then, I begin her face makeup, starting with the star over her eye. She actually has similar eyes to my doll Amora, my Valentine's Day doll. I like the way I did her face up, so I did it again with this doll. If there are any colors that are hard to build up, like this yellow on her face, then I use paint to darken it up. And that's her face done. On to the clothes. Normally, when I'm making doll clothes, I would make the patterns myself or find a free one online, but I decided to make it easier on myself and buy a pattern from Dollightful. The first step is to cut out the shapes from the fabric that I'll need. When that's all cut out, I sew them together, following the directions that Dollightful gave. Since her skirt will be two-toned, I sewed them together, and then cut off the excess to give it that seamless look. Here is my first attempt at the dress. She has a polka dot top with a half red, half checker pattern skirt. On a whim, I also added some plastic packaging that I had laying around since the red looked a bit plain. Then, I added a yellow ribbon around the waist. My first attempts usually come out a bit wonky, so I remade the second dress with some small changes. I did accidentally switch the red and checker pattern sides though. Then, I added pom-poms to her dress. And that's the dress done. Now to the thing I have the hardest time with, shoes. I got lucky this time and found a blog post from 2013 giving a very detailed step-by-step tutorial on how to make doll shoes using mostly paper. I will have this linked in the description for anyone who's interested. First, I traced the doll's foot out of regular paper and then glued that to some cardstock. I cut that out, then attached it to the doll's foot with some rubber bands. I wrap her leg in saran wrap to protect it from the glue that I'm about to add. I add glue to the entire bottom of the foot so that it keeps its shape once it's dry. When it was nice and dry, I got a piece of thick faux leather and attached that to the bottom to add some thickness. I also wrapped it in rubber bands so that it wouldn't unravel while drying. When that was done drying, I outlined the shoe in some more paper, which in hindsight, I could have probably skipped this step. I glued the shoe onto that piece of paper and then covered the leather with it. For the heel of the shoe, I cut out small pieces of a wooden dowel. I hot glued them to the back of the shoe. At this point, you could either make the shoe into a heel or a wedge. For this doll, I wanted a wedge, so I covered the heel in hot glue and then covered it with a piece of paper. I add more faux leather to the bottom of the shoe so that it looks more presentable. And that's basically the shoe done. Now it's time to make it look less ugly. I get some red fabric and glue that to the shoe. Then for the strap of the shoe, I found this red and white ribbon that reminded me of a circus tent and glued that to the sides of the shoe. And to hide the straps, I wrapped it in yellow embroidery thread. As a final touch, I added some stars and confetti-looking trinkets. And that's the shoe done! For her bow, I make a quick rectangular shape with some yellow fabric and flip it inside out. The idea is that I will scrunch at the middle so it looks like a bow. My first attempt was way too big, so I resized it. Here's how it would look. I wrapped the middle part in some thread and then covered it with some frilly yellow ribbon. And that's her bow done! Her clown collar was a bit tricky. I got some lacy white ribbon and hot glued the top together. When enough of the ribbon was glued together, it would look like this. I had to kind of mess around with the neck collar so that it would fit around the doll's neck. Then I sewed some parts together to keep them from separating. I cut off the excess, and that's her neck collar done. I also made some stockings off camera. The last step is her hair. I used Japanese saran in the color Wild Thing from the Doll Planet. Then I get to work plugging in her hair. When done, I put glue in her hair to keep it from coming out. Finally, it's time to reunite her head and her body. And I did it without cracking her face this time. I boil wash her off camera, then set her aside to dry for a couple hours. For some finishing touches, I also painted her nails. And she's done! I ran some names by my mom, and she had the idea to name her after confetti. She suggested Fetty, which I quickly said no to since it reminds me of the rapper Fetty Wap. So we settled on Connie. So please meet Connie the Clown. This is my 8th doll that I've made, and man was she fun. I really left her face up, and the neck collar came up surprisingly convincing. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. Bye! When I first decided that I wanted to do a clown doll, I doodled different types of clowns in my sketchbook. I gravitated to— ooh. When that's all cut out, I sewed them together, following the— dang! My first— ooh. I was three letters in, bro. Then— ooh, that was so loud.
What? You said, let's go.
Dude, I yelled. I got lucky this time and found a blog post from 2013 giving a very detailed step-by-step tutorial. Dang! Ugh. I add more faux leather to the bottom of the shoe so that it looks a bit more presentable. Oh, I bit my cheek in the middle of talking, man. That hurt, actually.
Ready?
No. I smacked my lips in the beginning and then it threw me off.